So we're the hosts. We're going to be your hosts today. I'm Mike Laub. I'm the head coach with the Roofstock Academy.
And I'm Emil Shore. I work on the marketing team here at Roofstock.
So I wanted to give a quick about us, little intro for those of you who may not know us. The head coach of the Academy. In my previous life, I worked as a professional fire protection engineer in the commercial property insurance industry. So have a little bit of unique insight and background into the world of insurance as a whole. I've been an active real estate investor for about the last 10 years or so. And I personally have experience purchasing single family homes, condos, small, medium-sized multifamily, double and triple net commercial properties. And after having done all that, I decided to specialize in multifamily value add projects.
And I'm Emil Shore again, and my unique story here at Roofstock, I actually was a customer long before I was employed here at Roofstock. So I bought my first rental property through Roofstock back in 2017, property I bought in Jacksonville, bought a couple more, and then was fortunate enough to join the team last March to get to help spread the word about real estate investing. And so I own a couple rental properties across the country, throughout Florida, Indiana, Tennessee, and Missouri. And I know that I already saw a couple questions coming up. Yes, this webinar is going to be recorded. We'll send out the recording and the full deck so you guys have it probably tomorrow. So you guys will get that.
And there's several hundred people on this webinar live, which is fantastic. Emil, what do you think about people holding their questions till the end, or should they throw them out when they think of them based on the slide we're on?
Yeah, I mean, if questions come up, just go ahead and throw them in the questions. We probably won't get to them till the end, but if things come up and you want to ask them about a certain slide, we'll probably just address those at the end of the webinar in the Q&A.
Perfect. So this is our agenda for the day, our table of contents, if you will. So Emil's going to kick it off by talking a little bit about Roofstock and the background.
Cool. So we always like to start every webinar. I know a lot of people who are coming in are newer investors. So just a quick rundown of Roofstock. We are a marketplace for investing in single family rental homes using technology to transform the way real estate is bought and sold. If you guys hear my dog in the background, apologize. Zeke is usually a good boy, but he hears somebody outside, so he's barking. Apologies for that. So our goal is to make real estate investing stock market simple. So we provide a lot of the information you need up front so you can make an informed decision instead of having to build your own team yourself and go out and find rental properties. So a quick snapshot of Roofstock. We're the, again, #1 marketplace for buying and selling single family rental homes. I think a lot of times people are curious, well, does Roofstock own these homes or how does it work? So we're purely a marketplace. So we just bring buyers and sellers together. And we surpassed $2 billion in transaction volume, I believe, at the end of last year. So $2 billion worth of real estate has been transacted through Roofstock. We also have our industry-leading Roofstock guarantee, which is 100% satisfaction, and you get a rent guarantee with that as well. A lot of people who are curious about our track record, we did a study to find what was the performance on Roofstock properties owned for 1+ years. And it was a 25.8% overall return. I think we did this study in early 2019, and we saw home price appreciation of 18.5%, and then rent growth and operating, so cash flow, 7.3% to get that overall return number. You guys can see a lot of great reviews on Google reviews, and our expertise and innovation is driven by our founder team, which is Gary Watson and Rich Ford, who head up our team, have a lot of experience in the industry. We were also named in 2019 FinTech Most Innovative Companies by Forbes. So that's just a quick review of Roofstock. Yeah, Michael.
I was gonna say, it's great. We just actually had Rich on a podcast. He did a webinar with Tom Schneider last week, another Roofstock about talking about COVID-19, and the Q&A got cut off a little bit for reasons I won't go into now. But so Rich did a follow-up podcast episode where those Q&A questions actually got answered. So if you were on that webinar or have any interested in knowing about what's going on with the state of the market due to COVID-19, check out the podcast. I think that episode's coming out either today or maybe tomorrow, Emil.
Yeah, I think it's coming out later this week or early next week. And at the end of the webinar, we'll show you guys how to go access the podcast.
We've got links to all that. Yeah, perfect.
So we offer a full suite of services from the beginning of learning right? Like we have right here, the Roof Talk webinar. We also have our Roofstock Academy, which is our mastery program with on-demand lectures, proven strategies, and one-on-one coaching to give you a really tailored experience and mentorship. We also, through purchase, we have our team of account executives who are, we like to consider them our Roofstock experts. So at any time you want to have a call with them, learn more about Roofstock and the properties available for sale, you can chat with them. You also see our local market experts, and we have our program called Bring Your Own Property. So if you find a property outside of Roofstock that you like, you think would be a good rental property, you can submit it to us, and if it's approved, we'll do a full underwriting. If it's approved, you get to bring it into the Roofstock safety net and get those guarantees I mentioned on the earlier slide. We have a link there at the bottom if you guys want to access that later. And then through closing, owning, and selling, we have our team here to help you. So it's not just up through sale. Our team is really here to help investors throughout their entire journey, even post-closing.
Awesome. So let's kick it off here by first talking about what Section 8 is, what does that investing look like, and how does it work? So let's first start by talking about what Section 8 is, because I think it's a term a lot of people have heard. There's probably a lot of misconception around it, a lot of misnomers, and maybe some of us don't even know what it is. So Section 8 is part of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974, and it was created to assist low-income renters. And the program is overseen by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, otherwise known as HUD, and it's administered by the local public housing agency, or PHA, which we have in all 50 states. So the requirements for a tenant to become eligible for Section 8 vary from state to state, wherever you go, and are based on income and family size. So if you're approved, Section 8 tenants receive rent vouchers that pay up to 70% of their monthly rent and utility costs. So here's an overview of how Section 8 real estate works for property investors and tenants with housing vouchers. So tenant-based Section 8, there's kind of two different tracks. So we have tenant-based and then project-based. So tenant-based Section 8 is where the voucher actually moves with the tenant. So these vouchers are difficult to obtain, and tenants often wait years to receive one. But once they do, there are strict rules the tenant must follow to avoid losing their voucher and then have to reapply through the entire process. The project-based Section 8 is a little bit different in that the voucher is attached to a specific property. So if the tenant moves, the property remains Section 8 for the next qualified tenant. And so to qualify, a family must be low income, meaning that its income may not exceed 80% of the local median income in order to move into the Section 8 SBPRA housing. So, and that's project-based, section-based housing. So in order for you can't just have anybody move into a Section 8 property just because it's Section 8. So Emil and I were chatting before this webinar and saying, well, what if we have a project-based Section 8 unit that comes online, can just anybody move in? And the conclusion we came to is no, that the tenant and the family also has to qualify to move into that qualified Section 8 unit. So let's talk about how tenants qualify. So this is based on income and family size. So the State Public Housing Authority determined the eligibility for housing vouchers based on total gross income and family size. And assistance is limited to US citizens and certain specific categories of non-citizens who have eligible immigration status. The total family income can't exceed 50% of the median income for the country or metropolitan area where the family lives in most cases. So based on where the property is located, or where the family is trying to move, or the tenant's trying to move to, is going to be driven by what the median income looks like in that area. So you can imagine in New York or California or Seattle, that median income is going to be significantly higher than in maybe more rural parts of the country. So the PHAs by law must provide 75% of their vouchers to applicants whose incomes don't exceed 30% of the area median income levels that are published by HUD. And so these median income levels are published by HUD on an annual basis. So again, this is something that's subject to change based on wherever you go, but also from year to year. So if someone didn't qualify last year, the HUD median income levels might change, and they typically keep up with inflation. Someone might qualify this year or vice versa. So tenants applying for Section 8 assistance must provide the PHA with information on family income, assets, and family composition. Once the PHA verifies the applicant information, the agency determines program eligibility and the amount of housing assistance payment. So it's really evaluated on a case-by-case basis. It's not this umbrella, everybody gets the same thing. It's a case-by-case basis. Then the tenant goes on a waiting list for an available Section 8 property if there isn't one right away. So let's talk about tenants, landlords, PHA, and HUD and how they all play a specific role. So the tenant, after the PHA approves the lease and the house the tenant wants to rent, the tenant signs a minimum 1-year lease with the landlord. The landlord may require security deposit depending on local housing law. But at the end of the lease, the landlord and tenant may renew the lease or stay on month to month if allowed by the landlord. Tenants must follow the terms of the lease, keep the property in good condition, and notify the PHA of any changes of family or income composition. So landlords, after passing the PHA property inspection, the landlord must provide the tenant safe and well-maintained housing and a reasonable rent for the period the home is occupied by the Section 8 tenant. The landlord must also provide all agreed to services and adhere to the terms of the lease. So this is really no different than a standard lease with a standard non-Section 8 tenant. I think every landlord, every property owner has the responsibility to provide a safe and well-maintained property and housing for their tenant. Tenants are your clients. We want to treat our clients well. So I think this goes for Section 8 as well as non-Section 8. So really not a whole lot of difference in this capacity. If I can get my clicker to work. So the Public Housing Authority administers the Section 8 voucher program at the local level, and they examine the tenant income, family composition, and they'll actually inspect the quality standards of the rental property annually. And if the landlord fails to meet the owner obligations under the lease, the PHA might terminate the housing voucher payment to the landlord. So it's really important that everybody is keeping up their end of the bargain, their end of the agreement, because there is somebody watching, making sure that everyone's keeping things on the up and up. So then we have HUD. And so HUD monitors the program, the PHA programs to ensure that rules are being properly followed, and they provide funds to the PHAs to make housing assistance payments and reviews the PHA applications for additional funding as money becomes available. So it's really kind of this trickle down effect, HUD at the federal level, the PHAs at the local level, then we have our landlords and tenants also at the local level. And so there's this accountability going up the food chain, if you will. So someone's always watching to make sure that everybody is keeping up their end of the bargain, as I was saying previously. So Emil, do you want to talk about the pros and cons of Section 8?
Yep, let's get into it. Okay, so the pros and cons, at one time or another, almost every single family rental property investor will be asked by a prospective tenant if they accept Section 8 housing. And if it's not you, if you have your property managed by a property management company, they're the ones receiving that, but it's very likely that they're receiving these types of inquiries. And so the decision on whether to rent to a Section 8 tenant depends entirely on the investor, investment strategy, and property. So it is up to you. And so we're going to go into the pros and cons so you can make that decision if Section 8 is an investment strategy that you want to take on. Okay, so here's our list of pros. I'll go down these. So the first one is you get a stable and guaranteed monthly rental income with the government paying up to 70% of the Section 8 tenants' monthly rent and utility bills. So this, as the title said, during uncertain times, this is what I believe is the most attractive to investors, is that the government is basically ensuring that up to 70% of the rent payment is being paid in addition to what the tenant is paying. So at a bare minimum, you're getting what the government is covering of that portion. The other one, and Michael's going to talk about this in his section about, he has a couple units that have Section 8 tenants, and he's going to talk about his personal experience, but vacancy rates in Section 8 real estate can also be a lot lower because tenants tend to stay where they are and renew year after year. Again, like we mentioned, it's not easy for Section 8 tenants to go and find how, not all landlords are going to be willing to accept Section 8 tenants, so it's not super easy, and it's expensive. And these are lower income families, and moving is expensive, so the incentive for them to get up and move isn't very high. So you usually have a lower vacancy rate with a Section 8 tenant. You also have fast. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, we've got someone on the line, Cordell, and they say that they're an expert in the area, and they've got a ton of tenants, Section 8 tenants that are paying that HUD is paying more than 80% of the housing. So that's great to know. Thanks so much for letting us know, Cordell. And it sounds like they've actually got a portfolio looking to sell. So we can chat more about that offline. But go ahead.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that's a good to chime in. So up to 80%. I guess it depends on local government and what the maximum
There could be some local
amount.
factors affecting that. Yeah.
Right. So fast unit turns and lease up periods, because in many markets there's a waiting list of Section 8 tenants looking for a home to rent. So again, not always easy to find. So you have faster turns and lease up periods. The government agency often allows owners to set rental rates at the higher end of the fair market rent spectrum, because HUD knows that there's frequently a shortage of landlords willing to rent to Section 8. So this can be another benefit. If, you know, in the local area, there's a certain range, let's say $900 to $1,000 for similar rentals. It's usually on the higher end that they're willing to go on those, knowing that most landlords aren't willing to accept these types of tenants. And then your marketing costs can be lower, because with Section 8 real estate, landlords are able to get their available property on local housing authority websites for Section 8 voucher holders to see. So they do some of the marketing for you. You can obviously market it on the normal places you would, Zillow and Craigslist or wherever, but Section 8, they also have their own site where they're doing marketing as well for you. Okay, so going over the cons now. So because it's controlled by government, you're dealing with bureaucracy, red tape, and the length of the approval process for becoming Section 8 landlord can be frustrating. So you as a landlord, there's a couple hoops you have to jump through. And so a lot of that, you know, can be painful, and also potentially reduces the profits a property owner could make by renting to non-Section 8 tenants. The second con, you have delayed payment processing of up to 60 days before the first payment from the government is received, each time the property is rented to a new Section 8 tenant. So this is just something that happens when you first lease it to a Section 8 tenant. There may be a little bit of a delay from the government side on that first payment. So it can take up to 60 days for that first one. And this is the other kicker, additional property inspections are required by HUD. So usually at the time, it's usually, I think, once a year, Michael, right? When the renewal comes up, you have someone coming in, inspecting the property again, making sure that you're keeping the property to a certain level that was agreed upon. It has to be livable. It has to, there's, you know, things that you might usually see as deferred maintenance until someone else leaves. The HUD may require you to fix that thing now to make sure it's maintained to a certain level. And so property owners should still conduct the same routine for tenant application process, credit, and background checks used for non-Section 8 tenants. This isn't so much of like a unique con, but just remember that just like you would with any other tenant, the process is the same. So you still have that whole process to go through. And the last one, evicting a tenant using a housing voucher for rent is much more complicated than a regular eviction. In fact, HUD publishes a 29-page guide on the required procedures to evict a Section 8 tenant. So even if you own a property that's in a landlord-friendly state, where it's typically you as the landlord have a little bit more recourse if a tenant doesn't pay or is doing something to the property to evict them, with Section 8, it's harder to do that. So that's an important thing to note as well.
And Emil, we have a tenant percentage update. We've got Mitch out in Jacksonville, Florida, who said that he has a tenant that gets 100% of their rent paid by the government, by HUD.
Wow.
So there we go. It can be anywhere from 0 to 100%. So anywhere across the spectrum. So thanks for that, Mitch. I appreciate the update.
Awesome. Yeah, and Victor added, it might be something COVID related where they'll go up to 100. So I don't know if that's consistent or if it's just during the time like right now.
Yeah, Mitch, is that constantly they pay 100%, or is that just because of COVID? And while he's responding, I will jump in here with my personal experience. I've been several inherited Section 8 tenants on properties that I purchased. They always pay their portion of the rent on time. They're subsidized, it's not 100%. So, and the government's portion always comes in on time, like clockwork, month in and month out. So they tend to be, again, on average, a bit more demanding as compared to other tenants, as they know that i.e. my property manager, has to fix and address issues in a timely manner, like Emil was saying, because if my property manager doesn't, we get reported to local PHA and to HUD, and that really threatens our ability to collect those vouchers. So they know that they're in definitely a position of power. However, on the other hand, I also have tenants who remain quiet as a mouse because they don't want to quote unquote rock the boat, so to speak. They're happy, they're content, they don't want to rock the boat, they don't want to make trouble, so they're just kind of keep to themselves. And that can be a great thing or it can be a bad thing if they're not telling you about issues. So you just want to make it known as a landlord, as an owner, that just because someone's Section 8, they can still absolutely let you know about repairs that need to get made. That shouldn't be, you shouldn't treat them any different than a standard non-Section 8 tenant. So in my experience, again, I have not been able to raise rents on a few of those Section 8 units, as the review process needs to be done in order to do that. And the market rent needs to have been elevated in the area to support the claim that those rents should be raised for those Section 8 properties. But the opposite end of that spectrum is those units haven't been vacant for years now, which is a major, major plus. And so I always encourage people that I consult and coach with within the academy to run the numbers on what it's going to cost you to raise the rent. And most people say, what does it cost me? It doesn't cost me anything. I just make more money. But if you lose a tenant over a $15 or $20 or $25 a month rental increase, and you've got a month of vacancy, did you just shoot yourself in the foot because you cost yourself 1 month of vacancy and you were trying to make $250 to $300 by that minor rental increase? So vacancy kills returns. We all know that as investors. So if we can keep those units occupied, the longer the better. And so overall, my experience has been very positive with Section 8, and it's been very welcome in this day and age, especially with the uncertainty surrounding COVID-19. So I've been getting those rent checks from the government day in and day out prior to, and still now, even as a result of the virus. So it's very welcoming, and I would absolutely rent to Section 8 tenants again in the future. It's been great. It's been great. So of course you have the good and the bad, but overall it's been net positive. Emil, do you
Cool.
want to
I'm
talk
gonna
about how
hop
to?
into, yeah,
Thought we lost you there.
we're tripping up over each other a lot this one. All right, so I'm gonna talk about how to become a Section 8 landlord next. So what's the actual process if you want to accept Section 8? So Section 8, this is kind of just reiterating what we talked about earlier, but Section 8 landlords, again, you're required to provide decent, safe, and sanitary housing to a tenant at a reasonable rent according to HUD. So Section 8 real estate must pass the housing quality standards set by HUD and be maintained to those standards as long as the owner receives housing assistance payments. So property owners sign a contract with the state, PHA, Public Housing Agency, and are required to provide the service agreed to in the tenant's lease in the PHA agreement. So just a reminder there. Now we're going to get into the 4 steps that it's required to actually become a Section 8 landlord. So number 1, you have to inform the state public housing authority of property availability. So you complete the application, provide any requested personal information that they ask you. And the PHA will also review your rental rates to ensure they fall within the guidelines for comparable rental property in your area and may require you to lower the rent if it is too high. The second step, once your application is accepted, is the property inspection. So after the PHA has approved you as a Section 8 landlord, an inspector will come out and actually visit the property to make sure it meets those guidelines set by HUD and the local and building safety codes. So any needed repairs that are highlighted during the inspection will need to be completed prior to the property being approved. So prior to you even having the availability to have a Section 8 tenant, those things need to be taken care of. Step 3, you're going to advertise the rental property just like you would, but you make it as available to Section 8 voucher holders. So the state PHA will add your property to their list, and you can also market your Section 8 real estate for rent on websites such as Zillow and Go Section 8. And Go Section 8 is specifically for Section 8 rentals. So people who have the Section 8 voucher know to go to that site, and it's specific for them. They know those properties. They'll be able to be accepted on those. And the 4th and final step is your form submission. So after you've completed your routine tenant screening and agreed to the rent to a Section 8 tenant, several more forms that you have to submit to the State Public Housing Authority. And it can take up to 60 days for a Section 8 landlord to receive HUD's portion of the first rent payment, which we covered earlier, but just reminding everybody. And once you're in the system, those funds will be deposited directly in your bank account, like Michael was mentioning in his personal experience section.
And Vanessa asked a great question. She's asking, in all of these steps that we're talking about to be a Section 8 landlord, is this you as the owner personally, or is this something that the property manager should be doing? And I think that 9 times out of 10, it should be the property manager. They might need information about you as the owner specifically. So again, in my case, I inherited the tenants and the property that was Section 8, so I really didn't have to do anything. The regular inspections that are done annually, the requests to increase the rents, that was all done by the property manager. I've never spoken to the local PHA. That's all done by my property manager.
Yeah, that's probably just a good point in general, in that, let's say you're considering buying a Section 8, let's say it's a property that's already has a tenant in place, Section 8 tenant, I would reach out, whoever your landlord's going to be, maybe it's the existing, if it's the existing landlord, you know they have experience with Section 8 or existing property management company. But if you're considering one of those and you have a property management company in mind, I would definitely call them and ask them if they have experience with Section 8. They likely do, but it's really good if you're considering Section 8 to know that your property manager has experience here.
It's a super good point, because there's just more steps involved than with a traditional tenant, which if a property manager has been in business for more than a day, they've had experience with. So you definitely want to ask that question of if you're considering Section 8. Yeah, super good point, Emil. So let's see, where are we now? Now I'm going to talk about finding properties, finding Section 8 properties, since I think a lot of people are looking to that as a niche with these uncertain times. So on Roofstock, it's really easy. Once you've narrowed down your search to a specific area, the Roofstock marketplace makes it really easy to search for the Section 8 real estate. Simply click on the More tab for additional search options when you're looking at the filters, and then scroll down and select the option for Section 8 only. And that looks like this. So as we're looking up here at the filters, we just come over here and we click on More, and that's going to bring up this whole drop-down menu here. And then we can click on Section 8. We can click on Include, Only, or Exclude. So if we click on Only, this is obviously, and then hit Apply, going to be showing us properties that are only Section 8. So it makes it super, super easy within the filters to do that.
I checked right before we hopped on here. There were 53 Section 8 rental properties on the marketplace available for sale as of
awesome
right before this recording.
Okay, perfect. By the end, there's going to be like 2. So there's a current Section 8 portfolio for sale that we just wanted to highlight, because I know a lot of investors are interested in picking up our portfolio or picking up numerous properties. This is a Chicago, Illinois 6-home portfolio that's exclusively Section 8. So kind of neat, wanted to highlight it. It looks like it's advertised at a 7.7 cap rate. For those interested, go on and check it out. That'll be under the portfolio filter within Roofstock. So now let's going to touch on one more thing, and then we'll jump into our Q&A.
So we mentioned the podcast a little earlier. Just wanted to touch on that real quick. I know someone mentioned, where can we check out Rich Ford's Q&A from the COVID-19 SFR industry related webinar roof talk he did last week. So that episode will be released soon on our podcast. We just launched this about a month ago. Michael, Tom Schneider, our director of investor education, and I had this podcast up, and it's called The Remote Real Estate Investor. We like to think of it as your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about remote real estate investing. And so we'll send out the deck and you'll have the links there, but we're on Apple, Google, Spotify. You just search for The Remote Real Estate Investor. So if you subscribe, you'll get the notification when that episode with Rich comes out. And we do about 2 episodes a week right now on a bunch of different topics and with different, we talk about 1031s, and we'll talk about Section 8 and ROI and all these different things. So that's another way you can come learn about real estate investing.
So this is the Roofstock Academy. Sorry, I bugged out there for a minute. Wanted to chat just briefly about it. It's our paid mastery program where we've got a full suite of real estate investment tools, and really it's designed as the whole program at its genesis was designed to help people make great investment decisions and become great real estate investors. It's totally agnostic of where you want to do your buying and selling. So if you want to buy through Roofstock, that's great. If you want to buy through the MLS, that's great. This program is designed to help people make great investing decisions, again, independent of where they're doing their purchasing. So we have on-demand lectures. I think, Emil, it's like 50 plus hours now that we're up to. Does that sound
Yeah,
all
and
right?
it's constantly being added to. And whenever, anytime you join the program, you get all the additional material for free every time we add more stuff in there. But
Yeah. And it's
yeah, I
it's
think we're on 50
lifetime
plus.
access. Sorry, it's lifetime access. So if you are not investing now but know you will in the future, this could work for you. We've got one-on-one coaching. Oh, excuse me, 40 hours at least when this was put together. We've got over 3,500 that have been watched so far. The average lecture score is 4.64 out of 5, which is pretty cool. We have reviews and surveys going out all the time to get constant feedback about how we can be doing better. And like I was saying, members receive lifetime access to all existing and future content. And then we've got one-on-one coaching. We've done over 105 of those coaching sessions. My guess is that number is way higher now.
Yeah, we need to go update some of these slides.
Yeah, I think these are way out of date. But the average coaching score is a 4.9 out of 5, which is awesome. I only get 5 stars. Probably Tom got a lower score, dragging down the average. So it's one-on-one coaching, and so it's really designed to, again, just be one-on-one and understand what it is you're looking to do. And the questions that I ask most of the students I work with is, I want to get some background on you and get to understand what you're looking to do, because that might be very different than what I'm looking to do or what Emil's looking to do. And I always tout that there's no, right or wrong in real estate as an overarching theme. There's right and wrong for you and what makes sense for you. And so we can really tease that stuff out on a one-on-one coaching session, when that's a lot tougher to do when talking to a broader audience. Then we have the single family rental playbook. This is a tool, an analysis tool that we put together for the Academy, and it's comprised of pro forma and buy box data gathering tools. We put together some interview templates for interviewing property managers and real estate agents and insurance representatives. So in case you're out there building your own team, this is something to help you do that. And then we've got a private forum. We use Slack right now as our platform. We talk about all things, real estate investing. And so here's a screenshot from one of our members. Chris was asking about some underwriting, and so I answered his question. We've got different threads for different types of discussions. We've got deal discussion, financing discussion, general mastery program type stuff, and then direct messaging to your coaches here as well. So it's a really great tool. It's Instant Messenger, allows us to communicate very quickly. And as part of the program, we offer a lifetime money back satisfaction guarantee, in addition to $750 in Roofstock Marketplace credits. So when you go close on a property through Roofstock, you get a $750 check after closing back to you. And right now we're offering a $100 discount code. And if you type in section 8 into the roofstockacademy.com at checkout, you'll get $100 off. And so the program is normally $12.50, and with that coupon code that expires Sunday, it's $11.50. And again, if you register, if you buy the program and end up hating it, you can't stand the sound of my voice or Emil's voice or one of the other coaches' voices, or the content just not for you, again, we offer a lifetime money back satisfaction guarantee with no questions asked. So some additional resources. If you have questions, please email me or Emil at malbaum@roofstock.com. Emil is eastshore@roofstock.com. Some other useful links are going to be to schedule a call with a marketplace expert. You can do that right there on calendly.com/roofstock-buy. The Roofstock Academy can be found at roofstockacademy.com, and the Roofstock webinars can be found on join.roofstock.com/roofstock materials. So I think it's time, Emil, for some Q&A. What do you think?
Yeah, let's get to it. So if you guys, I know people have been leaving us some questions that we'll get to now, but if you guys have any specific questions, go ahead and throw them in the question box, and we'll start running through them. We have about 20 minutes. We have 4 to 5 p.m. Pacific set aside, so we got about 20 minutes to run through any questions you guys have.
And there's a ton of people on here, so forgive us if we don't get to all your questions. We will do our absolute best.
Yes. By the way, I saw a couple people were saying, a couple other people chimed in saying they get 100% of rent for their Section 8 tenants. I saw someone who was in New Jersey said it was up to 80%. So it seems like it might be differing from area to area.
Okay, yeah, that's great to know. So I think one of the biggest takeaways from this webinar is that this is because the PHAs are running it locally. Talk to your local property managers, talk to the local PHA that's in charge of the program to get an understanding of how it works in your area, because it might be tough to apply this on a national level.
Andrea is asking, when purchasing a home specifically for Section 8, how long does that home need to be used for Section 8? So I believe as long as you have a Section 8 tenant in there, it has to remain Section 8. Once that tenant leaves, I don't think you're required to keep it Section 8. Do you know if I'm saying that right, Michael?
Yeah, I think so. So if it's Section 8 and the Section 8 tenant leaves, you can then decide whether or not you'd like to have a new Section 8 tenant move in, assuming the property still qualifies under those HUD guidelines and passes the inspection to have a new Section 8 tenant move in. It's totally up to you if you decide, you know what, I'm done with Section 8. I want to have just a standard tenant. That's totally up to you. I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, please let us know. And Luke wrote in, he said they started investing in 2019 and Chris Bennett held his hand wading into the water. It's been a great experience working with Roofstock. Now it's 4 units due to time zone. So this webinar is based over in Singapore. Glad to be here, fellas.
Wow.
Glad to have you here, Luke. Thanks for hanging in there with us. The question is, given recent challenges, Roofstock believe there is a more robust nationwide Section 8 program in the future. I believe that there is coming out. That's something that we're looking into, making it more feasible, identifying more properties on the MLS to bring onto the marketplace that are Section 8 or that have Section 8 tenants in place. That's correct, Emil, right? That's your understanding as well?
Yeah, I think Luke is asking, will there be more robust nationwide Section 8, will
HUD be
Luke, are you
changing?
asking, yeah, like, will the guidelines change, or are you asking, do we think more investors will be open to Section 8?
I hope I'm not misunderstanding the question. And Joe is asking, does the Section 8 tenant pay the landlord directly for their portion of the rent? And in my case, yes. So when I see my monthly accounting from my property manager, I see 2 payments, and one's from HUD directly coming to my property manager, and the other is directly coming from the tenant. So they pay whatever, $200, whatever their portion is, to the property manager, just like they're paying their rent, and then the remaining portion comes from HUD.
Juan is asking, I missed the coupon code in the previous slide. So that one for Roofstock Academy, it was just Section 8. One word, Section 8, and you'll get $100 off the Academy, and that expires on Sunday, just as a reminder.
Sandeep is asking, any idea how long it would take to get approved for Section 8? I'm planning on renting my condo and wanted to allow Section 8 tenants. It's a great question, Sandeep. I don't think that there's a safe answer to give here. As for a blanket across the nation, it's going to be dependent on your local PHA, how overwhelmed they are, how many applications they have. So definitely reach out to your local housing authority, your local public housing authority, and ask that question. My guess, especially right now, it's tough to say with everything shut down and folks working from home. My guess is going to be a lot longer, a lot more impacted than it would be when things were normal and when they eventually go back to normal.
Trina is asking a great question. Is it a good idea for a very beginner investor to get involved with Section 8 rentals? Michael, do you have an opinion on this one?
I'm sorry, I totally missed the question. I was reading another one. What was the question?
Is it a good idea for a very beginner investor to get involved with Section 8 rentals? I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer to this one. This one might just be a personal preference.
Yeah, because if I say yes and she has a horrible experience, it's going to be my butt on the line. So, it all depends on what you're comfortable with. Like I said, and so many other people have shared in the question section, that they've had great experiences. And anytime you're dealing with people, you can have good, bad, ugly, everything in between. So it just kind of comes down to the tenant. And so you might have a terrible experience whilst your neighbor might have a great experience. As a first time or newer investor, you know you have that guarantee of the rent coming in, so that's a really nice thing to consider. But your property manager, or if you're managing yourself and self-managing, should go through the same screening process that you do with any other tenant, vetting them, calling references, making sure that they're a qualified tenant to be renting that property in the first place, independent of whether they're Section 8 or not. So I think that this battle is won or lost on the tenant screening side of things. And so if you've got a really airtight tenant screening process, or your manager does, I think it can be an absolutely fine thing to do. But again, it just comes down to whatever you're comfortable with. We got Brian saying it's 100% Birmingham, Alabama. Cool.
Marion brought up a good point. So all owners should get the Section 8 checklist and get very familiar with the inspection, what the inspection is going to cover. I think that's an awesome idea. So if you have the checklist and you know what the inspector is looking for, that'll help you know exactly what needs to, like what standards the property needs to be in, so that it's approved quicker and you move through that process quickly. So that's a great tip from Marion.
Victor says Section 8 at this time is the best position to be in. Awesome.
Somebody, I forget where it was. What happens if the, here we go. What happens if the tenant does not pay the balance of their rent? So Michael, have you had anyone who has never paid their portion of the rent while the government paid theirs?
I haven't. I was hearing from someone else that the HUD might evaluate if the tenant loses their ability to pay the rent. HUD might reevaluate what the market rent needs to be. They might come in for the remainder of that rent. They might readjust the rent, or they might lose their voucher if they're not holding up their end of the bargain. That's what the lease stipulates. So I think it's going to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, JC just chimed in saying they lose their voucher. So like the last point you mentioned, they can lose their voucher.
Yep. And everyone's asking great questions. Thanks for being so engaged, everybody. It makes it a lot more fun for Emil and I to answer questions, as opposed to sit here and smile at everybody.
Let's see. Seen a lot of questions that are showing up multiple times that we've answered in some form.
Someone asked, is it hard to evict a Section 8 tenant? And yeah, that was one of the bullet points in a slide that Emil covered. There's actually a 29-page document that HUD published on basically the proceedings that need to happen in order to evict a Section 8 tenant. So it's absolutely more complicated to evict a Section 8 tenant. Great question.
James asked, if a Section 8 tenant is in place and the property is acquired, do you maintain the status or do you need to reapply? And this was actually something you and I were talking about, Michael, when you inherited your Section 8, when you bought your Section 8 properties and inherited, when you bought your properties and inherited Section 8 tenants, man, that was a tongue twister. You didn't have to do any reapplication, right? It was just, it's to the tenant, and now it's just in your possession. There's no reapplication or anything that happened when the transferred hands, right?
Exactly. So I just took over receiving those payments. It took a little bit at the close to get that squared away between the Section 8 payments going to the previous owner, because she was self-managing. So they would go directly to her account. So after we got that squared away, then it's been like clockwork. And any applications, paperwork that has needed to be done, I don't know about, because my property managers have handled it. So they haven't needed any personal information from me as an owner to date. Watch, I'm sure I'm gonna get something in the mail like tomorrow that says, hey, we need all this information from you.
Yeah. Oh, just kidding.
Right.
Ravi asked, if the voucher is lost and the tenant doesn't pay, can you follow non-Section 8 rules and evict them? And I believe so. And JC, it's good. We have a couple people who are like really experienced with Section 8 in the Q&A chiming in. So thank you guys. Appreciate it. So JC was saying if they flat out don't pay, they can be evicted and they lose their voucher. But you still get the voucher amount from the government, so it can be a really great hedge. So if they lose their voucher, right, they don't pay, they lose their voucher, they can go through the eviction process just like any other property.
Great. Thomas is asking, how can I find out the demand in my area for Section 8 vouchers? Just trying to figure out if there are some more if there are more voucher than properties, or are there more properties and competition for the tenants? Great question. I would call your local public housing authority. And I feel like that's my default answer for all this stuff. But really, that's who I would reach out to, because they're the ones that are giving out the vouchers. They're going to be able to tell you how many vouchers they're giving out, what, they obviously can't give you names and information, but they can tell you how many vouchers are given out, how many properties they have listed on the Section 8 website. I think it might be another good way to go about it is go see if you can't find Section 8 properties that are listed for rent in your area, and just see how many there are. And based on what your rental market looks like, that should be pretty indicative of how much competition there is.
Mario's asking a good question. Might an investor have to make additional repairs to a property to meet PHA standards, even though the purchase inspection reports repairs were completed? I would say yes, because most of the time, if you have two different inspectors go through a home, they will not list out all the same things. And the guidelines that HUD has and the inspector that they have might be looking for, they might be much more detailed, might be looking at certain things. So even if you, at the purchase inspection, feel like you have everything repaired, I'd be willing to bet that you're not off the hook completely. They might find some things that you may have to repair as well.
Ryan is saying he thanked us both. Super helpful. You're most welcome, Ryan. Glad you're getting some value out of it. And he's asking, can owner occupants in a 2 to 4 unit scenario rent to other units as Section 8? Only tenant-based vouchers. Yeah, so that's my understanding, is that you absolutely can. If you've got multiple units, you can decide how you want those to be rented, whether that's Section 8 or non-Section 8. And so that's one of the cases that I'm in. Granted, it's not an owner-occupied building, but it's an 8-unit building, and I've got 2 out of the 8 are Section 8 tenants. So absolutely, you can kind of pick and choose, piecemeal it together as you'd like. Saeed is asking, does Roofstock help with property manager selection? Absolutely. So we've got a list of kind of preferred and recommended vendors based on every market that we're in. So if you go to the buy process tab on the roofstock.com, you'll see the property managers that we recommend, that we've vetted in the area. You're absolutely welcome to use your own, but if that's a good fit, that's great. We try to give people a name and a number to at least start with, so they don't have to go out and cold call folks all on their own. Brian's asking, is there a simple way rather than calling each PHA to determine what the rent caps and percentage paid by PHA are for various markets? Not that I know of. You might be able to search it online, but again, like you're all seeing here, we got a lot of our information from online, and clearly it's not 100% accurate. So there are going to be times when you just want to get it directly from the horse's mouth, and that would probably be one of them, especially if I was going to be basing my income and expense assumptions based on Section 8 income. I would want to know for sure, like 110%, what those rental amounts are and what the cap increases are.
Brandon has a question. Michael, I think this is probably for you. Do tenants, since I think this applies to one of your properties, do tenants who are not Section 8 ever have issues living with your other tenants who are Section 8?
That's a good question. I mean, I've got non-Section 8 tenants living next to non-Section 8 tenants that hate each other, that have issues with each other. So I don't think the fact that it's Section 8 versus non-Section 8 really has any bearing on issues. People are people, and you have people doing silly stuff, and you have people doing great stuff all the time. So a lot of times the tenants don't know who Section 8 tenants are. It's not like there's a label on their door that says Section 8. Everybody pays the rent to the property manager. No one's any the wiser. So to answer the question, no. I guess would be the long-winded way of saying that.
Does Roofstock operate in or have properties in New York City? Jonathan is asking. We do not. We actually have a lot of investors who live in New York City, price out of their market, and so they're looking for properties in the Midwest or the Southeast. So we don't have properties in New York City. They don't cash flow too well, and down payment is massive. So primarily properties in the Southeast and Midwest.
Bharat is asking how much Roofstock charges for the buying and selling service. That'd be a great thing to touch on, Emil. What do we charge to list a property for sale, and what do we charge people to buy on the marketplace?
Yes, so for the seller, it is a 3% of the sale price. And then to the buyer, it's 0.5% or $500, whichever is greater. So if you're selling a property that's under 100,000, it's $500. If it's over, or excuse me, if you're buying a property over 100,000, it's going to be 0.5%. So, and then as a seller, it's a 3% commission
And
or
for
fee.
anyone who might not be familiar with buying and selling properties, just traditionally, most properties you'll pay 6% commission just to sell. And then as a buyer, you typically don't pay any commission to your buying agent. So it's a little bit different structure here. It's a lot less expensive to sell. And then on the buying side, you're paying a little bit of the commission, but you're not paying for the due diligence that's done. That's a Roofstock expense, where typically if you're transacting in the everyday world on the MLS, you've got to go pay for your inspection, which is like several $100 typically.
On each property, right? So if you're, if you want to look at multiple properties, whereas we have the inspection report available on most of the properties on the marketplace.
Yeah. Juan saying you missed the coupon code. It's section 8, but this webinar and all the slides will be posted hopefully tomorrow. So if you missed it, you can take a look at it there.
Jonathan's asking to purchase properties on Roofstock. Is it all cash or can you finance the way you normally would? And it's either or. You'll actually see some properties where the seller will require cash only. Usually on lower priced homes, we'll say like in the $40,000 to $60,000 range. Some sellers, because those homes are usually a little bit harder to get traditional financing, they'll require cash only. So you'll see a little cash only sign on them on the marketplace. But most of the homes, it's either or. And what, from what I've heard, just so you guys are all aware, you're going to probably have to talk to a couple lenders right now. A month or two ago, lending was very loose. You could 20% down on any rental property. Rates have lowered, but a lot of lenders are either not lending or they've made their requirements stricter. So your credit score, your financial house, everything has to be a little bit tighter. So long-winded way of saying you can do either or, but with financing, just make sure you reach out to a couple banks right now to get pre-approved. I would do that before you make an offer on a property.
Great webinar. Thanks so much. Yeah, you're welcome, Mitch. Glad you enjoyed it. You're welcome, Brandon. Ooh, Fernando asked a great question. Is there a tax benefit when working with Section 8? Not that I know of. There may be, but it's a really great question. Chat with your tax professional. They're going to be the best ones who are going to be equipped to answer your specific financial tax questions.
What is the loan fee that is listed? So I think this is a follow-up to what I was just talking about. Guru's asking, should I pay loan fee when I get my loan from an outside bank? It depends. That's why it's good to compare. And JC actually brought up a good point. You can try a local credit union for lower cost homes. They're usually willing to lend on lower cost if a bigger bank isn't. Some banks will charge points, no matter what's called points. So let's say you take out a loan for $50,000 and they charge you 1%. That's $500 you're paying as points. It depends. So some banks may charge points, some may not. Some may charge you points for a lower interest rate. So they'll offer you maybe a 4 down to like a 3. And if you want the 3% interest rate on a 30-year, they'll charge you 2 points or something. And it's like a sliding scale. It's also in times where they have higher volume, they may charge higher points just because there's such a big influx of demand, and I guess they can. So it just, there's not like one specific answer. It's you should talk to multiple banks and see what kind of points and all their fees amount to.
And pit them against each other. If you get a really great quote from one lender, go tell the other lender who's more expensive, hey, I got this quote over here, can you beat it?
Mm-hmm.
They're likely to compete for your business, but if they don't have to, then they likely won't bother.
Yep.
Juan asks, can I use the 750 credit to pay the 500 fee when I purchase a property? Great question. So unfortunately, no. The marketplace fee, the $500 fee that Emil was talking about, is due on the front end when you make an offer, and then it's only charged if your offer gets accepted. The $750 you get after closing. So once you've closed on the property, then you'll get that check in the mail. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yep. And so that fees, again, just to clarify, Michael, it's only charged when your offer is accepted. So that's the key point. If you make an offer, you're not charged anything. You're going to put your credit card information in, and when your offer is accepted by the seller, that's when the marketplace fee is charged.
Michael is asking, does anyone use self-directed IRAs? Yeah, Tom is actually in the process of doing that. Tom Schneider, one of the other coaches here. So he's in the process of doing that. He's going to be hosting a webinar, I believe, coming up in the next couple days, maybe the next couple weeks, about what that looks like. And he's going to be keeping us all posted. So if there's anybody online who has done it, it'd be great to chime in and answer Michael's question. And Hanwei is asking if the house is in an LLC, can it offer Section 8? Yep, absolutely. That's how I have mine.
All right, 5:01. We've gone a little bit over. If you guys have any additional questions, again, you can email Michael and I, and if we don't know the answer right away, we'll make sure we find someone who does. So Michael is at malbaum@roofstock.com, and I'm at eShore@Roofstock. And just again, a reminder, this was recorded. We'll send that out in an email soon, probably tomorrow morning. You guys should have that, in addition to all the slides here, so you guys will have all that. Thanks for joining us today. This was awesome. We had a lot of great participation and questions. This was great.
This was awesome. Yeah, thank you everybody for the great questions and for being so engaged. Really appreciate it. Hopefully this was helpful, and looking forward to seeing everybody on the next one.
I'll talk to you guys later.
Have a great evening, guys.